The sleek obsidian spacecraft sliced through the inky void, its angular hull reflecting faint starlight from distant galaxies. Inside the cockpit, two strikingly beautiful aliens sat in tense silence, their bald heads lowered, high cheekbones casting sharp shadows across their faces. Lara and Kira were no ordinary travelers. They were exiles, banished from their homeworld of Xandar for challenging the core principles of their society. The Xandarian High Council had labeled them a threat to unity, their radical ideas about individuality and personal freedom considered too dangerous to be left unchecked. For daring to speak against the collective, they'd been sentenced to live among the chaotic humans of Earth. Kira glanced over at her sister, who stared out at the stars with a mixture of anger and sorrow. "I can't believe they're doing this to us," Lara hissed, her emerald eyes flashing with defiance, "exiling us like criminals just for thinking differently." Kira reached over, resting a comforting hand on Lara's shoulder. "We knew the risks, sister, but I never thought it would come to this. I suppose we dared to hope they would understand." Her voice held a tinge of sadness, but also a resolve that made Lara feel, even for a moment, that they could handle this together. As the ship neared Earth's atmosphere, the dark skies gave way to blinding flames licking the hull. The sisters braced themselves as the craft shuddered under the intense pressure, their bodysuits adjusting to the increasing G-forces. With a bone-jarring impact, the ship crash-landed in a vast, grassy field, just on the outskirts of a sprawling human city. Steam hissed from the vents, the spacecraft cooling as it settled on the ground. As the hatch opened with a slow, mechanical whir, a crowd of humans began to gather, murmuring and snapping pictures with their primitive devices. Lara and Kira emerged, standing tall and proud, their metallic bodysuits glinting in the sunlight. They held their heads high, refusing to show fear or uncertainty before these lesser-evolved beings. The humans stared, eyes wide with curiosity and disbelief, clearly struggling to comprehend what they were seeing. "Pathetic," Lara muttered under her breath. "These creatures can barely comprehend their own existence, let alone ours." Kira shot her a cautious look. "Remember, sister, we have to blend in if we're to survive here. Anger won't help us now." Just then, a man in a dark suit pushed through the crowd, flanked by soldiers armed with weapons trained on the two aliens. His posture was cautious, a mixture of fear and fascination etched on his face. "Greetings," he said, his voice wavering slightly. "I am General Marcus Briggs, representing the United Earth government. We come in peace." Lara scoffed, unimpressed by the display of authority, but Kira stepped forward, inclining her head respectfully. "I am Kira, and this is my sister Lara," she said, her voice calm and melodic. "We are here because we have no other choice. Our people deemed us unsuitable for their society." The general blinked, clearly taken aback by her words. Regaining his composure, he nodded and cleared his throat. Welcome to Earth then. We will do our best to accommodate you during your stay." As Lara and Kira allowed themselves to be led away, they exchanged glances filled with both trepidation and anticipation. Earth was a primitive, chaotic world, yet there was a spark of potential here, perhaps even the chance to rebuild something new. As they walked, surrounded by guards and the hum of curious voices, they both dared to hope, despite themselves. The sisters were led through the sterile hallways of a government facility, the walls painted in stark white, as if trying to impose order on the chaos beyond. Lara couldn't help but feel hemmed in, trapped by the cold, sterile environment. She clenched her fists, her anger simmering. "I don't trust them," she whispered to Kira. "They're hiding something, I can feel it." Kira frowned, her gaze steady. "Perhaps, but we have no choice for now. If we're to survive on this planet, we need their help. Let's keep our eyes open and play along, for now." Finally, they were shown to a small, sparsely furnished room, 2 narrow beds, a metal table, and a tiny bathroom. It was a far cry from the luxurious quarters they were accustomed to on Xandar, but it would have to suffice. As the door clicked shut behind them, Lara threw herself onto one of the beds with a groan. "This is a nightmare," she muttered, staring up at the ceiling. "Stuck on this backwater planet with these savages." Kira sat beside her, a wry smile tugging at her lips. "Come now, sister, it's not all bad. Think of it as an adventure, a chance to explore a new world, to see life through a different lens." Lara snorted, rolling her eyes. "You always were the optimist, Kira, but even you have to admit this situation is less than ideal." Kira sighed, her shoulders slumping slightly. "I know, Lara, but we have to make the best of it. Who knows? Maybe we'll find something here that we never even knew we were looking for." The sisters settled into an uneasy silence, both lost in their thoughts, as the reality of their exile sank in. Outside, the The city lights flickered as night fell over the sprawling metropolis. Somewhere in the heart of that city, their new lives awaited, unknown, unpredictable, and filled with a sense of possibility that neither dared to fully acknowledge. The next morning, they were escorted to an interrogation room, the stark white walls pressing in on them as General Briggs and his team entered. The questions came swiftly, their words peppered with curiosity and wariness. "So, let me get this straight," Briggs said, rubbing his temples. "You were exiled for having radical ideas about individual freedom?" Lara scoffed, her emerald eyes flashing with disdain. "You wouldn't understand, human. On Xandar, the collective is everything. Individuality is seen as a weakness, a threat to our way of life." Kira placed a calming hand on her sister's arm. "What Lara means is that our people value unity above all else, but we believe that true strength comes from embracing our differences, not suppressing them." The general leaned back, clearly thoughtful. "Interesting. And what exactly do you plan to do now that you're here on Earth?" Lara and Kira exchanged a glance, a silent conversation passing between them. In truth, they hadn't planned that far ahead. The journey to Earth had been filled with anger and betrayal. Now the future stretched before them like an open road, unexplored and daunting. "We don't know," Kira admitted quietly, "but perhaps with your help, we can find a place for ourselves here." Briggs nodded slowly, his expression unreadable. "As representatives of the United Earth government, it's our duty to ensure the safety and well-being of all sentient beings on our planet. We'll do our best to assist you." As they left the room, Lara couldn't shake the feeling that their future was about to change in ways they could never imagine. They had been cast out, forced to adapt, and now found themselves on the brink of a new beginning. And though neither sister dared to say it aloud, each wondered if they might find something worth staying for on this strange, unpredictable world. Days blended into one another as Lara and Kira settled into a routine on Earth. Although settling was a generous term, Earth's customs, its chaotic streets, and the people's unpredictable nature were unlike anything they had experienced on Xandar. Each morning, they would attend briefings led by a team of scientists, political figures, and cultural advisors, intent on familiarizing them with human society. Despite their resistance, they found themselves adapting, if only to survive. Kira, the more diplomatic of the two, approached their situation with a level of curiosity, even respect. She would spend hours reading Earth's history on a tablet provided by the government, her eyes scanning through centuries of human struggles, conflicts, and discoveries. The depth of humanity's resilience surprised her, as did their penchant for creativity, something the structured, conformist, Xandarian culture rarely valued. One evening, while poring over Earth's classical literature, Kira found herself captivated by a collection of poems. She read aloud, her voice soft as she recited the words of a poet who spoke of stars and infinite skies, dreams unfathomable, and souls forever reaching. She paused, looking up at her sister. "Lara, these humans, they have a way of finding beauty in the mundane. Even in darkness, they create light." Lara rolled her eyes, barely lifting her head from the corner where she had taken up a habitual, vigilant stance. "Finding beauty? This place reeks of disorder, Kira. They're primitive, stuck in a cycle of self-destruction. How can you see anything admirable in that?" "Because they persevere," Kira replied, undeterred by her sister's scorn. "They fall again and again, yet they rebuild. That's something even we could learn from." Lara sighed, folding her arms. Though she had once championed the idea of freedom, living it was a different matter. The concept was seductive in theory, but in practice it felt raw, uncomfortable, and unpredictable. Xandar had been a place of order and collective purpose, a system where every individual contributed to a greater whole. Here, individuality seemed to breed chaos, each human acting as if their desires outweighed the needs of the many. Yet, as the days passed, Lara noticed subtle shifts within herself. She caught herself smiling at a group of children playing in the park, their carefree laughter filling the air. She observed couples sharing quiet moments, hands intertwined as they walked beneath Earth's setting sun. Humans, she realized with begrudging respect, were creatures of intense emotion and strange habits, fragile, perhaps, but undeniably resilient. One afternoon, the sisters were granted permission to leave the facility under strict supervision. They wandered through the bustling city streets, their alien forms hidden under loose clothing and caps that covered their distinctive features. The sights, sounds, and scents overwhelmed their senses. The busy hum of traffic, the clatter of street vendors, the aroma of foods both foreign and inviting. At one stall, a vendor displayed handcrafted jewelry, intricate pieces molded from silver, and adorned with small, sparkling stones. Lara's gaze fell on a delicate bracelet, a simple yet elegant piece that caught the light with every movement. "Admiring the trinkets, are we?" Kira teased, a playful smile breaking her usual calm. "It's well crafted," Lara admitted, her voice almost begrudging. She lifted the bracelet, running her fingers over the metalwork, noting the care that had gone into creating it. The vendor, an older woman with warm, kind eyes, approached them. "Beautiful, isn't it?" she asked, her voice gentle. "It was my late husband's design. He believed every piece should tell a story, a bit of magic for whoever wears it." Kira and Lara exchanged a glance, each silently absorbing the unexpected tenderness in the woman's words. They had rarely encountered such sentiment on Xandar, where unity meant sacrificing individuality, including personal mementos or unique stories. Kira tilted her head. "On Xandar, personal expression is discouraged. Every citizen serves a purpose, but individuality is considered selfish." The woman nodded, as if she understood. "Well, here, we embrace our quirks. I think life would be terribly dull otherwise." She handed Kira the bracelet with a wink. "Take it, dear. Consider it a welcome gift to Earth." Surprised by her kindness, Kira accepted, slipping the bracelet onto her wrist. It felt unfamiliar yet oddly comforting, a reminder that perhaps there was a place for them here. As the sisters wandered further, their curiosity grew, and with it, an unspoken bond with their surroundings. They watched street musicians performing with lively passion, artists sketching portraits for passers-by, and couples dancing to the faint music drifting from a nearby cafe. It was unlike anything they had known on Xandar, a vibrant, messy tapestry of life, where each thread seemed to weave in and out, creating a whole greater than its parts. Later that evening, they returned to the facility, reflecting on the day's encounters. Lara, usually the cynic, seemed uncharacteristically thoughtful. "Perhaps there's something to be said about this individualism," she conceded, though her tone was reluctant. "These humans find strength in their differences." Kira nodded, pleased to see her sister softening, even if just a bit. "Perhaps that's what we're meant to learn here, a balance between unity and individuality." Their thoughts were interrupted by a loud knock at the door. General Briggs entered, his face tense with urgency. "Ladies, I'm afraid our time for small observations has ended. We've received reports of a Xandarian force en route to Earth. They aren't here for a visit." Lara's eyes narrowed, her guard immediately rising. "What do you mean? Why would they send anyone?" Briggs sighed, his expression grave. "Your High Council appears displeased with your integration. It seems they fear your influence may spread. Our intelligence suggests they're here to eliminate threats to Xandar's unity." Kira's heart sank. "So they intend to kill us? All for refusing to conform?" Briggs nodded, his face shadowed with regret. "And anyone who protects you." The sisters exchanged a long, solemn look. In that moment, the weight of their exile became brutally clear. This wasn't a temporary punishment, but a death sentence for daring to defy their people's rigid beliefs. "We'll need protection," Kira said, her voice calm yet steely. "If they're sending warriors, it won't be a small force. The High Council doesn't take risks." Briggs met their determined gazes. "We'll do everything we can to help you. Earth is no stranger to defending freedom after all. You're not alone in this." The words hung heavy in the air, an unspoken alliance forming in that stark, sterile room. Despite her fear, Kira felt a stirring of hope. In this world that prized individuality and courage, she and Lara had found allies willing to stand with them. For the first time since their arrival, they felt a sense of belonging. Later, as they prepared for the night, Lara sat by the window, looking out at the city lights. "We'll fight, Kira. We'll show them that even two exiled souls can make a difference." Kira joined her, resting a hand on her sister's shoulder. "And perhaps in doing so, we'll finally understand what it means to be free." Their journey on Earth had begun as punishment, a harsh exile. Yet, as the prospect of battle loomed, they felt something awaken within them, a fierce determination to survive and perhaps to finally live. The days leading up to the impending arrival of the Xandarian force were a mix of preparation and tension. Earth's military, led by General Briggs, worked tirelessly to set up defenses, while Lara and Kira trained alongside Earth's soldiers, learning the nuances of their technology and tactics. Briggs had assigned them a small team, tasked with adapting to the Xandarian ways of combat and defense, to ensure everyone would be prepared for what was coming. At first, the soldiers were wary of the sisters, uncertain of their true loyalties, but as they observed Kira's quiet intelligence and Lara's unyielding determination, they began to understand that these two were nothing like the typical Xandarian. They were committed to something rare on Xandar, individual choice. This was something the Earth soldiers understood well, and gradually, respect grew between them. Lara, never one to shy away from a challenge, pushed herself beyond her limits in training. Her combat skills were already sharp from Xandarian drills, but Earth's way of fighting was raw and adaptive, not bound by collective strategies. It was more instinctual, relying heavily on individuality, a stark contrast to the methods she'd been raised with. She found herself adopting an intuitive style that was surprising even to her. One evening, while practicing hand-to-hand combat, Lara noticed a young soldier named Corporal Diaz watching her with intense curiosity. "Is this how you all fight on Xandar?" he asked, a mix of fascination and skepticism in his tone. Lara paused, catching her breath. "Not exactly. Xandarian combat is more synchronized. We're trained to think and act as one, but I'm starting to appreciate Earth's way. You improvise, adapt. There's freedom in it." Diaz smiled, clearly intrigued. "That's one way of putting it. Here, we're encouraged to think on our feet. Rigid patterns can be fatal in a fight, especially when facing an unknown enemy." They continued sparring, with Diaz sharing tips on Earth's close combat techniques. For the first time since her arrival, Lara felt the thrill of genuine learning and adaptation. She was discovering a side of herself that had been suppressed under Xandar's collective mentality, a self that was agile, responsive, and unrestricted. Meanwhile, Kira spent her days immersed in Earth's scientific and technological archives, poring over research that challenged everything she knew. The Xandarian hive focused on unity and efficiency, which often led to stagnation. Earth's inventiveness, however, was sparked by necessity and even desperation. There was an unpredictable edge to human innovation that fascinated her. During one of her research sessions, Kira struck up a conversation with Dr. Harding, a physicist assigned to help her understand Earth's approach to technology. They spent hours exchanging ideas, discussing theories of energy, propulsion, and the nature of existence. Kira was taken aback by Dr. Harding's humility, his willingness to question everything, even his own beliefs, a stark contrast to Xandarian scientists, who rarely questioned the collective knowledge. "You Earthlings," Kira said with a smirk one afternoon, "you seem to thrive on challenging authority. Where I'm from, questioning knowledge is seen as a threat to the collective." Dr. Harding laughed, adjusting his glasses. "I guess that's part of our nature. Progress often comes from those brave enough to question the way things have always been. But I imagine it's a bit unsettling for you?" Kira nodded thoughtfully. "It is, but it's also exhilarating. I feel like I'm finally seeing beyond the constraints I never knew I had." As the training and preparations continued, Lara and Kira's bond with the Earth soldiers grew stronger. Despite the initial mistrust, the humans started seeing them as allies, even friends. For Lara and Kira, these friendships were new and fragile, yet deeply significant. They had been conditioned to rely solely on one another, but Earth's way of building connections, of working together yet remaining individual, resonated with something dormant within them. Then, one evening, General Briggs called a final briefing. The Xandarian force was set to arrive the next day, and they would not come alone. According to intercepted signals, the High Council had sent an elite squad, the Varan Commandos, Xandar's most feared fighters. They were trained to suppress any threat to the collective, operating with ruthless precision. The stakes had never felt higher. Briggs outlined their defensive plan, dividing his forces strategically around the facility and surrounding areas. Lara and Kira, understanding the Xandarian tactics, advised on possible vulnerabilities and gave insights into how the commandos might operate. Yet, as the briefing came to an end, a somber silence filled the room. One of the soldiers, Lieutenant Avery, stood up and addressed the group. "We're fighting for more than just our lives here," he began. "These two," he gestured toward Lara and Kira, "have shown us what it means to be part of something bigger, while still honoring who we are as individuals. If we lose this battle, it's not just about Earth's safety, it's about preserving the right to be different." The room was filled with quiet nods and murmurs of agreement. Lara and Kira were moved by the sentiment. They had come to Earth as exiles, and yet here they were, standing as symbols of a freedom they had only begun to understand. Later that night, as they prepared for what was to come, Kira turned to Lara. "This is our chance, Lara, not just to survive, but to prove to ourselves and to them that individuality isn't a weakness, it's a strength." Lara's gaze was steady, fierce with determination. "Then we'll make sure they remember that. Tomorrow, we show them who we've become." Morning arrived with an eerie calmness that hung over the city like a shroud. The streets were empty, the air tense with anticipation. The Xandarian fleet's arrival was imminent, and the city had been evacuated as a precaution. Earth's military, positioned and ready, awaited their first sight of the invaders. Kira and Lara stood in the heart of the defensive lines, armed and ready. Earth's soldiers, who had once viewed them with suspicion, now looked to them as allies, even leaders. Kira felt a pang of fear but quickly dismissed it, channeling her emotions into focus. They had come too far to turn back now. As the first Xandarian ships descended through the clouds, the air grew thick with tension. The sleek, dark vessels hovered ominously, their silhouettes stark against the brightening sky. From each ship, soldiers began to descend, their movements synchronized, their every step an assertion of the collective's will. The Varan commandos were clad in dark, seamless armor that seemed to absorb the light around them. Their helmets were faceless, making them appear less like individuals and more like a single, unified entity. Kira's heart clenched at the sight. This was what she and Lara had once aspired to be, but now it looked cold, lifeless, a reminder of the unity that had nearly stripped them of their identities. Lara gripped her weapon tightly, her jaw set with steely resolve. She locked eyes with Kira, a silent understanding passing between them. They would defend this new life, this new way of being, even if it cost them everything. Then, with a sharp nod from General Briggs, the battle began. Earth's forces moved in a flurry of coordinated strikes, using everything they had learned from Lara and Kira about Xandarian tactics. The sisters, meanwhile, fought with a newfound blend of Xandarian precision and Earth's adaptability. They dodged, struck, and countered with a fluidity that surprised even themselves. For the first time, they were fighting not as instruments of the collective, but as individuals with a purpose, a reason to stand their ground. And as the first wave of commandos faltered under Earth's resilient defense, it became clear that the sisters had found something invaluable here: freedom, in every sense of the word. As the Xandarian commandos pushed through Earth's defenses, the battlefield grew chaotic, with soldiers from both sides clashing amid the smoke and fire of Earth's last stand. Lara and Kira maneuvered through the fray, their movements swift and precise, almost instinctual from years of collective training, yet with a newfound agility born from their time on Earth. The sounds of battle filled the air, shouts, energy blasts, and the dull thuds of hand-to-hand combat echoing against the city's empty streets. The commandos moved with eerie synchronization, executing maneuvers with the cold precision of a single mind. Kira felt a pang of familiarity. She had once fought alongside them, following the same unified patterns, but now she was outside it, and it felt liberating. She no longer moved as part of a faceless collective. She fought as herself, making decisions in the moment, trusting her instincts rather than the guiding voice of the hive. Lara spotted a commando unit advancing along a side alley, attempting to flank a group of Earth soldiers caught in a firefight. She darted forward, signaling to Kira to follow. They weaved through the chaos, using the debris and shadows to stay undetected. When they reached the commando unit, Lara whispered, "We need to disrupt their formation. Hit them hard and don't let them regroup." Kira nodded, already scanning the area for cover. She caught sight of a metal scaffold that could be used to create a choke point. If we force them under that scaffolding, we'll have a bottleneck. With quick precision, Lara and Kira moved into position. Using a broken piece of concrete as cover, Lara took the lead, hurling a smoke grenade into the path of the advancing commandos. The thick cloud obscured their vision, causing them to slow down and clump together. Seizing the moment, Kira leaped out, taking down the closest commando with a powerful strike. Lara followed, catching another off guard and disarming him in one fluid motion. Their movements were quick and decisive, like dancers in perfect sync. The commandos, accustomed to predictability, faltered under the sisters' adaptive tactics, unable to regain their footing. As the smoke began to clear, the commandos looked around in confusion, their rigid formations disrupted by the unexpected resistance. One of them raised an arm, signaling for backup, but before he could finish, Kira had already disabled his communication device. The sisters moved with ruthless efficiency, striking down the commandos one by one until the alley was quiet. When they regrouped with the Earth soldiers, Lieutenant Avery gave them an approving nod. "Not bad," he said, a hint of admiration in his voice. "You two are starting to think like humans." Lara smirked, feeling a surge of pride she hadn't expected. For the first time, she was beginning to see value in Earth's way of doing things. "Maybe there's more to this individuality thing than I thought," she replied, glancing at Kira, who gave a small, approving smile. Their success in the alley had turned the tide in that part of the city, but the battle was far from over. The Xandarian forces were unrelenting, pushing through Earth's defenses with their sheer numbers and relentless tactics. General Briggs ordered a retreat to a central defense point, a makeshift fortress where the remaining Earth soldiers could regroup and defend against the advancing forces. As Lara and Kira made their way back to the stronghold, they spotted a group of Earth soldiers pinned down behind a barricade, trapped by a squad of Xandarian commandos advancing on their position. Without hesitation, Lara charged forward, catching the commandos' attention and drawing their fire. "Kira, get those soldiers to safety," she shouted over her shoulder. Kira didn't need further prompting. She sprinted to the trapped soldiers, signaling for them to follow her to safety. One by one, they moved under her guidance, dodging blasts and taking cover behind rubble as they reached the stronghold. Kira's calm under pressure inspired the soldiers, who had initially been skeptical of her alien origins. They could see that she was fighting for the same cause, risking her life alongside them. Meanwhile, Lara engaged the commandos, her moves calculated but fierce. She fought with a fire born of necessity, her every strike aimed not just to disable, but to protect the soldiers who had come to mean something to her. She ducked, dodged, and retaliated with a ferocity that surprised even her. Here she was, a Xandarian exile, defending the people of Earth as if they were her own. Back at the stronghold, Kira and the rescued soldiers joined the others, who were preparing for the final line of defense. General Briggs surveyed the situation, his expression grim. "We're losing ground," he admitted, "but we're not done yet." Lara finally joined them, a bit battered but triumphant. "We need to change tactics," she said, wiping sweat from her brow. "The commandos are relentless because they're still following their rigid patterns. If we can find a way to disrupt that, maybe we can hold them off." Kira thought for a moment, then nodded. "Their formations rely on communication relays. If we can disrupt their command signal, we might be able to break their cohesion." Briggs considered this, his eyes narrowing. "How do we do that?" Kira stepped forward, pulling up a holographic map of the battlefield. She pointed to the Xandarian command ship hovering above the city. "Their command relays are synchronized with that ship. If we can get close enough, we can hack into their system and scramble their signals." Briggs looked skeptical. "That's risky. We'd be sending people right into the heart of enemy territory." Kira's gaze was steady. "It's our best chance, and it has to be Lara and me. We're the only ones who understand Xandarian technology well enough to do it." The general hesitated, but seeing the determination in Kira's eyes, he nodded. "All right, I'll send a small team to cover you, but once you're in, you're on your own." Lara and Kira exchanged a glance, a silent promise passing between them. They had come this far, and they were ready to see it through. This wasn't just a mission, it was a statement, a declaration that they would no longer be pawns of the Xandarian collective. They would forge their own path, fight for their own beliefs. Under the cover of night, Lara and Kira made their way to the Xandarian command ship, their movements silent and precise. Earth soldiers provided cover fire, distracting the commandos and drawing their attention away from the sisters' approach. Every step was a risk, every shadow a potential threat. But they pressed on, driven by the sense that this was more than just a battle. It was a fight for their freedom. As they reached the base of the command ship, Kira activated her hacking device, linking it to the ship's communication relay. She worked quickly, her fingers moving with practiced precision as she bypassed security protocols and encrypted frequencies. Lara kept watch, her weapon ready, scanning the area for any sign of enemy reinforcements. "Almost there," Kira whispered, her brow furrowed in concentration. She bypassed the final encryption and initiated the scramble sequence, watching as the Xandarian signals distorted and fractured. Inside the command ship, chaos erupted as the commandos' communication broke down. They hesitated, unsure of their orders, their rigid formation unraveling without the constant guidance of the collective signal. On the battlefield, Earth's forces surged forward, taking advantage of the commandos' confusion. The tide was turning. As the command ship's lights flickered, Kira and Lara retreated, their mission complete. They watched as the Xandarian forces faltered, unable to regroup without their central command. For the first time, Earth's forces had a fighting chance. Back at the stronghold, Briggs received the update and rallied his troops. "Push forward, they're losing their footing. This is our moment." As the battle raged on, Lara and Kira felt a surge of hope. They had come to Earth as exiles, but now they were defenders of a world they had chosen to protect, a world that had shown them the value of individuality, freedom, and self-determination. The battlefield was a chaotic sea of bodies and blaster fire as Earth's forces seized the advantage, pushing forward with renewed strength. The Xandarian commandos, stripped of their communication network, fought as individuals for the first time, disoriented, unsure, and faltering. Lara and Kira watched the shift, marveling at how quickly a united front could crumble when individuality entered the equation. The irony struck them both deeply. The very thing they had been punished for was now Earth's greatest weapon. As the sisters made their way back to General Briggs's stronghold, their minds raced with the gravity of what was unfolding. The commandos, having been conditioned to function as a single unit, struggled without centralized orders. Earth's forces took full advantage, flanking and outmaneuvering their disjointed ranks. The tide was turning, but the battle was far from over. When they finally reached the stronghold, Briggs greeted them with a nod, his gaze filled with admiration and urgency. "I don't know how you did it," he said, his voice rough with exhaustion, "but this is the break we needed." Kira, catching her breath, responded, "We knew it was their weakness, General. The Xandarian collective relies on conformity. Break that, and they're vulnerable." Briggs nodded, his expression a mixture of determination and respect. "Well, let's make sure they stay that way. We're taking the fight to them." The general's plan was audacious. With the commandos in disarray, he intended to lead an assault directly into the heart of their forces. Lara and Kira would join the Earth soldiers, using their knowledge of Xandarian tactics to exploit every weakness they could find. The goal was simple: drive the Xandarians out of Earth's airspace, once and for all. Lara and Kira joined a squad of elite Earth soldiers, each one steeling themselves for the final push. As they advanced through the city, the air was thick with the sounds of conflict. The sisters fought side by side, their movements fluid and complementary, each covering the other's blind spots. It felt almost natural, a partnership forged in fire. At one point they encountered a squad of Xandarians attempting to regroup. Lara signaled to Kira, who nodded and moved in silently. They struck with practiced precision, disabling the Xandarians before they had a chance to coordinate. The Earth soldiers looked on in awe, watching as the sisters dismantled their former comrades with a mix of calculated strikes and raw efficiency. As they pushed deeper into enemy territory, Kira couldn't help but reflect on how far they'd come. She recalled the anger and betrayal she'd felt when they were exiled from Xandar, cast out by a society that refused to understand their views on individuality and freedom. Now, here they were, fighting for those very ideals alongside humans who, against all odds, had come to trust and accept them. But just as they thought they were gaining the upper hand, the battlefield shifted again. The Xandarian commander, a towering armor-clad figure, stepped forward, flanked by a group of elite commandos who had managed to resist the signal disruption. His voice, amplified by his armor, echoed through the streets, rallying the scattered Xandarian forces. "Fellow Xandarians," he bellowed, his voice cold and unyielding, "we do not retreat, we do not surrender. The collective will prevail." The remaining Xandarians responded to his call, rallying with a fierce determination that surprised even Lara and Kira. Earth's forces, realizing the renewed threat, scrambled to reorganize, but the sudden resurgence of Xandarian cohesion threw their ranks into disarray. Lara clenched her fists, her jaw set with grim determination. "We need to take him down," she muttered, her gaze fixed on the Xandarian commander. "If we can break his influence, the others might scatter." Kira nodded, her expression resolute. "Then let's end this." The sisters signaled to Briggs, who understood immediately. "We'll cover you," he said, motioning for his soldiers to provide support as Lara and Kira made their way toward the commander. As they approached, the commander turned his cold gaze on them, recognition flickering in his eyes. "Traitors," he hissed, his voice filled with contempt. "You've abandoned your people, your unity. You fight alongside these primitives." Lara raised her chin defiantly. "We fight for freedom, for the right to choose who we are." Kira echoed her sister's sentiment. "The collective may have cast us out, but we've found something better here, something worth fighting for." With a roar, the commander charged at them, his movements swift and brutal. The sisters dodged, each one countering his attacks with practiced agility, but his strength was formidable. Every blow he landed sent a shockwave through the ground, each step radiating authority and power. The battle between them was fierce and unrelenting. Lara and Kira fought as one, their movements synchronized, but the commander's relentless attacks began to wear them down. Their human allies attempted to intervene, but the Xandarian elites held them at bay, forcing them to watch as the sisters struggled against their powerful adversary. Just as it seemed the commander might gain the upper hand, Lara spotted an opening. She signaled to Kira, who understood instantly. Together they executed a feint, drawing the commander off balance. In that split second, Kira moved in, delivering a precise, devastating blow to his side, while Lara struck from the other direction, hitting a weak spot in his armor. The commander staggered, his expression one of shock and rage. He tried to counter, but the sisters pressed their advantage, delivering a series of rapid strikes that left him reeling. Finally, with one last powerful blow, they knocked him to the ground. As he lay there defeated, he glared up at them, his gaze filled with hatred. "You may have won this battle," he spat, "but the collective will never accept you. You're nothing but outcasts." Lara looked down at him, her expression cold. "We don't need the collective's acceptance. We have something far more valuable, our freedom." With that, the commander's strength faded, his body going limp as the last of his resolve drained away. The Xandarian forces, seeing their leader defeated, faltered. Without his presence to guide them, they began to retreat, scattering in disarray as Earth's forces pressed forward, driving them from the city. As the dust settled, the battlefield grew quiet, the echoes of conflict fading into an eerie silence. Earth's forces began to regroup, tending to the wounded and assessing the damage. Lara and Kira stood amidst the rubble, their bodies bruised and battered, but their spirits unbroken. Briggs approached them, a look of gratitude and respect on his face. "You saved us," he said simply. "I don't know how we could have done this without you." Kira nodded, exhaustion evident in her eyes. "We did what we had to. The Xandarians had to learn that control isn't strength." Lara looked around at the faces of the soldiers who had fought beside them, humans who, despite their initial distrust, had come to see them as allies. She felt a sense of belonging she had never known on Xandar, a feeling that went beyond the bonds of the collective. As the survivors gathered, sharing quiet words of relief and camaraderie, Lara and Kira found themselves surrounded by those who had come to see them not as alien outcasts, but as heroes. They had earned their place here, not through conformity but through courage, resilience, and a willingness to fight for what they believed in. In that moment, as the sun began to rise over the battered city, they knew they had found a new home, one that embraced them for who they truly were. And with that knowledge, they looked to the future, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, side by side, in a world where they were finally free. As the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, the survivors gathered in a quiet patch of Earth's ruined city, their battle-worn faces reflecting exhaustion and relief. The battlefield lay silent around them, a haunting testament to the brutal clash between two worlds. Lara and Kira stood among the humans, catching their breath as they surveyed the scene, their hearts swelling with a newfound sense of pride and belonging. After a moment of quiet, General Briggs approached the sisters, his face a mix of gratitude and reverence. "I don't think words can ever fully capture what you've done for us," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Your courage gave us a chance when we thought all was lost." Kira offered him a small, grateful smile. "It was a fight worth having," she replied softly, "not just for Earth, but for everything we now believe in. Freedom, unity, not through force, but through choice." Lara nodded, her gaze shifting to the soldiers around them. "It's ironic," she murmured, her tone contemplative. "We spent our lives believing that unity meant surrendering our identities, that we had to sacrifice our individuality for the strength of the whole. But here, we've seen a different kind of unity, one that's built on acceptance and choice, not control." Briggs regarded them with respect. "You've shown us that strength isn't about erasing differences, it's about embracing them." He reached out, placing a hand on each of their shoulders. "And you've proven yourselves as one of us." A cheer rose from the crowd, spreading like wildfire as the soldiers began clapping and shouting their thanks to Lara and Kira. The sisters shared a glance, their eyes shining with a mixture of disbelief and quiet pride. They had come to Earth as outcasts, yet here they stood as heroes, an honor they had never dared to dream of. As the applause died down, Kira stepped forward. "Earth isn't the only planet that needs freedom," she said, her voice carrying across the crowd. "Xandar, our home, is still under the control of the High Council, and there are many more like us who long for the freedom we've found here." Lara nodded, her gaze resolute. "We need to take what we've learned here back to Xandar. Maybe if we show them that unity doesn't have to mean conformity, others will find the courage to stand up too." The crowd grew silent, their expressions a mix of awe and sadness. For many, the idea of Lara and Kira leaving was bittersweet. They had come to see the sisters as friends, allies, and symbols of resilience, yet they understood the significance of their mission. General Briggs met their gazes, his expression somber but understanding. "If you're going to fight for freedom on Xandar, know that Earth will always stand behind you. We've got your backs no matter the distance." Moved by his words, The sisters nodded, their hearts swelling with gratitude. They knew this was not goodbye. It was simply the beginning of a new journey. Preparations for their departure began that same day. Earth's engineers and scientists, along with Kira's guidance, worked tirelessly to repair their sleek obsidian spacecraft. Though damaged from its initial crash landing, the ship was now more than just a vessel. It was a symbol of defiance, a bridge between two worlds. As they prepared to leave, they were joined by the two soldiers who had stood by them through the entire ordeal, Jake and Alex. The young men had been instrumental in rallying the troops and providing support, their bravery and loyalty unwavering. "Are you sure you're ready to leave Earth?" Jake asked, his eyes fixed on Lara. There was a hint of hesitation in his voice, a mixture of pride and longing. Lara's face softened as she looked at him. "It's not about leaving Earth," she said, her voice filled with conviction. "It's about carrying Earth's spirit with us. What we've seen here, the resilience, the bravery, it's a part of us now. We'll take that strength back to Xandar." Jake nodded, a faint smile crossing his face. "Then I guess Earth is in good hands." He extended a hand and Lara shook it, their grip firm and steady. Beside them, Alex turned to Kira, his expression reflective. "We'll be rooting for you. Know that you're not alone in this fight." Kira's eyes softened and she placed a gentle hand on his arm. "Thank you, Alex. Knowing we have allies here means more than you'll ever know." As the sisters boarded their spacecraft, a crowd gathered to see them off. Earth's soldiers, civilians, and even those who had doubted them at the beginning now stood united, their faces filled with admiration and hope. The sisters gave one final wave, their hearts swelling as they took in the sight of the world that had embraced them. "Let's go home," Lara whispered, her voice filled with resolve. With a roar of the engines, the spacecraft lifted off, slicing through the sky as it carried them toward the stars. As they left Earth's atmosphere, they shared a quiet moment, reflecting on the journey that had brought them here and the mission that lay ahead. The journey to Xandar was filled with anticipation and a quiet, simmering determination. They knew the risks. They were challenging an empire that had banished them, defying a collective that saw individuality as a threat. Yet, buoyed by the strength they had found on Earth, they felt ready for whatever awaited them. As their ship approached Xandar, they could see the sprawling cityscapes below, gleaming in the artificial light that blanketed the surface. But this time, the sight filled them not with nostalgia, but with purpose. Their landing was met with immediate resistance. Xandarian enforcers surrounded their ship, their weapons drawn as they prepared to detain the two exiles. But Lara and Kira were undeterred. They emerged from the craft, standing tall and proud, ready to face their people. A Xandarian officer stepped forward, his expression one of shock and contempt. "You dare to return after defying the council?" Kira's voice was calm, but her words were filled with conviction. "We return to share what we've learned, to show Xandar a new path, one that values both unity and individuality." Lara's gaze was fierce as she spoke. "Earth has taught us that strength isn't found in control, but in choice. Freedom isn't a threat. It's the truest form of unity." The officer hesitated, uncertainty flickering across his face. He was not alone. The murmurs of the crowd began to shift, curiosity and doubt replacing blind allegiance. The sisters' words were like sparks, igniting a dormant longing within those who had quietly questioned the High Council's dogma. As more Xandarians gathered, Lara and Kira spoke with passion, sharing their experiences, their newfound beliefs, and the courage they had gained. Word spread, and soon, even those who had once condemned them began to listen. Their defiance became a movement, inspiring countless others to stand with them. The High Council, faced with the undeniable power of the people's voices, was forced to reckon with a reality they could no longer ignore. In the end, it was not a battle that changed Xandar. It was a revolution of thought, sparked by the courage of two sisters who had dared to challenge an empire's very foundation. As the sun set over Xandar, Lara and Kira stood atop a balcony overlooking the city. Below them, their people celebrated, free for the first time to express their true selves without fear or restriction. The sisters shared a look, their hearts swelling with gratitude for the journey that had brought them here. Kira turned to Lara, her eyes filled with quiet joy. "We did it. We found a place for ourselves, not just here but in the universe." Lara smiled, her gaze drifting toward the distant stars. And to think it all started on that strange, chaotic planet called Earth. As they watched the celebration unfold, they knew their mission was complete. They had come full circle, bringing with them the lessons of Earth and the hope of a new dawn. They had found not just a home, but a legacy, one that would endure, lighting the way for generations to come, and with that knowledge they felt ready to face whatever the universe held, side by side, as champions of freedom and unity.